All right, we'll get started with your questions.
David, I'd like to talk to you about Byron Young. This is a guy that is a beast in the rushing defense. He's a space eater, eats up blocks, with an upside to become a very good pass rusher. Will you just talk about where you selected him, what you saw that slotted him there, please?
Yeah, big physical kid, long arms. He does a really nice job of being able to create leverage inside and control running lanes. It's a little bit of early down pass rush too right now. I think he can develop more than that, but he has some first step quickness, and because of his length, it makes it hard for a lot of those guards to handle him inside. So we see him being able to play inside. We also see him being able to bump out and play big end for us. In some of our different defensive packages. So saw him as a versatile guy on early downs that can, right now that can play inside, that can also move outside and play big end, has some pass rush ability, also foundation traits. Hard worker, smart, tough, dependable, loves football, a lot of the traits that we're looking for. And a kind of a self-made guy. So, really excited to be able to get him, have some of his versatility. Brings another level of competition, too, on the inside of our, both inside and at the defensive end position for us.
You had talked about tight ends being a deep group at the combine. Michael Mayer was somebody that a lot of people thought about as a first rounder.
Yeah.
When did you start tracking him and kind of like keeping an eye on that to maybe go up and go get him?
Yeah, well, when we got to the end of the first round, there were some discussions there about possibly moving back into the first round, and he was one of the guys that we had discussions about in that mold, and ultimately decided that that wasn't didn't come to fruition, and didn't kind of work out that way. So talked about it a lot last night, talked about it a lot today. And the fact that he was still there was a very exciting moment for us. He's one of the top 15 players on our board just in totality. So to be able to get a guy like Michael, a tight end, good size, really unique thing about him, I'd say, is his short area quickness. He's a bigger guy, but he still has, when you watch the tape, he has the ability to win in a short area. He can win on third down, use his size down in the red zone. Obviously has some size to continue to develop as a run blocker. Another kid, excellent traits, very smart. One of the, probably in terms of our scale of traits, one of the highest guys on our board in that regard too, the way we kind of measure that. So really excited to be able to get a young tight end with his skill set where we got him. We felt like that was very good value.
To piggyback on that, with trading Darren and the unfortunate situation with Foster, you need someone to step in like that. And that's a position where with this team, with the skill set positions, players that you have, Devontae, right?
Sure.
Is he someone who can make an immediate impact and sort of just meld right into the system and become a star because of his work ethic and his capabilities?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as you know, like when I talk about rookies, all of them are going to have to come in and earn their role. And there's a lot of transitions that go on in doing that. But his skill set, I mean, he has a skill set to come in and make an impact, for us in year one. And how far that goes, I'm not going to put any expectations on him to say he's going to be this or that, but definitely feel like he can come in and make an impact for us in the passing game. We signed a couple. We signed Austin. We signed OJ to one-year deals in the offseason. Obviously, Michael's going to be here for a long time, from a contractual standpoint. But high ceiling for him if he continues to grow and learn the nuances of the game. You're going to see some different coverages and some different matchups than you see in the college game, but has a very good skill set to make an impact for us.
Speaking of some of those shared traits, I think all three guys you took tonight have been in some really big games. I think they were all in college football playoff games. I'm sure there's a lot of coincidence there, but does that mean something when you're looking at film and you see a guy really pop, not only in just some random game, but in some of these big moments?
Yeah, I think being able to, perform in big games, also against another, I'd say, high-level competition. Obviously, playing it like Byron playing in the SEC. He gets a lot of that week in and week out, but also playing in big bowl games and things of that nature. Seeing guys perform, I'd say, at a high level in some of the bigger moments that they get to experience at the college level definitely has an impact. And the thing about college football is you try to see how players perform against the top level competition that they face. And, you know, some guys, depending on the conference, that works differently, but that's where we really look out and see how that stands out. And for some guys, it's at the Senior Bowl or the East-West game or one of these other all-star games that you get to see some of those matchups. But all those instances when we're able to see these guys play against other top-level competition, it does, it holds some weight, you know, when you're going through the evaluation process.
What's your initial vision for Trey Tucker?
Yeah. Trey has a lot of speed, and so he has a lot of, I'd say, versatility offensively, just in terms of both as a receiver that, you know, can play the receiver position. There's also, because of his speed, a gadget element to him that he can be used in getting him the ball in space and things of that nature. Whether, you know, there's a lot of ways that we've seen that done in the league, whether it's speed sweeps, whether it's in the screen game, but we really, you know, have studied him a lot, and just as a receiver, think he has the ability to win, and he's a tough matchup because of his short area quickness and just his straight line speed. He had a lot of explosive plays. Beyond that, which is unique about him, was his production as a gunner. And his production as a kick coverage player in the kicking game too, where he had a lot of production in that way, and then also in the return game. And so, again, he's going to add a lot of competition to that group. You know, we added some guys, you know, in free agency that have some of those skill sets. Again, some of those, you know, obviously this when you draft a player contractually, you have them longer than a year. So, you know, he's going to have some time to develop, but we think he's going to come in and compete right away, and just love the speed and explosiveness that he brings in, both as an offensive player, both as a returner, and then also his ability to cover in the kicking game too.
Yeah, congratulations on the draft picks. Sticking with Trey Tucker, how hard is it of evaluation when you have a guy who's like 5'9", 180 pounds, and you know, you try and see his versatility in the return game and also being able to dual threat as a wide receiver?
Yeah, I think when you're looking at guys that, you know, are maybe like shorter in stature, you know, the thing that comes to my mind when I think of Trey is that he plays bigger than his size. You know, Trey was also a high school wrestler in my hometown area of Akron, Ohio. So he always would kind of going back and just looking at his background from high school all the way through college, always had an edge, always had a chip on his shoulder, always played bigger than his size. And I think you saw that on film. You saw it as a gunner. So those are the types of things you're looking for. Do they play bigger than their size? Do they play, you know, with a certain amount of physicality and edge to them? And we felt Trey did that, and so felt really good about, you know, selecting him when we did.
Dave, I know each draft plays out differently, but you haven't addressed anything with the secondary just yet.
Yeah.
Do you still feel like there's some mining to do in that group?
Yeah, and there's still some players in that area that we like. And again, you know, the draft obviously falls in different ways, in different directions. And we knew once we worked through the draft that there was going to be some areas that, you know, you're going to have some areas that you're going to still want to fill or still want to grow. And, you know, whether that's through the draft, through college free agency, or beyond. But yeah, I think we still see some good players that are there in the secondary, and we'll obviously have to see how the board falls, and you know, see what happens in that direction.
I know you're locked in on the draft right now, but you know there are still veteran free agents out there. Specifically at cornerback, could that be maybe something that a guy like Rocky Sin, who played with the Raiders last year, that you traded for and viewed favorably last year, could somebody like that be somebody you explore bringing in?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, but I'm not going to speak specifically to Rock, but I think just in general, whether it ends up being the free agent market, whether it ends up being the trade market, you know, whether it ends up going down even farther down the list there, prior to the cut down to 53. I mean, there's going to be some other opportunities for us to add players. Like you mentioned, there's still some quality players out there that have been productive NFL players. And I think that's once we get through the draft, you know, we'll kind of reassess where we are as a team, reassess what those markets are, and see kind of how those puzzle pieces fit together. And if they make sense, then they make sense for us.
You mentioned building from the front back, winning the point of attack, being explosive. Do you feel like those first three picks addresses that, even with Michael Mayer as a physical force at the line of scrimmage?
Yeah, and I think Michael, yes, and I think there's a little bit different element to all three of those guys. Obviously, Tyree, you know, has an explosive pass rush ability. Also, can be very disruptive in the run game. Michael is a guy that's shown the ability to be a tough matchup on third down, be able to win on third down, be able to win in the red zone, which are obviously critical plays in a football game. And Byron, just with his length and power, his explosive ability to reset the line of scrimmage in the run game, and also uses length and leverage to disrupt the pocket. And so we feel with those, those three guys, and then, Trey brings an explosive element in the areas that I mentioned that, he's had a lot of success in. So, still have work to do, but feel good about, what we were able to do so far.
Dave, you were very emphatic about each team has its own board and how that player relates. So I'm curious, when you look at all the guys you've selected so far, have you been able to do well getting guys that maybe you had higher on your boards a little bit later?
Yeah, I think we have. I think, I'm not going to get into the specifics of how we had each individual guy ranked, but yeah, we felt like, we were able to get good value with the picks based on where those players were on the board. Now we're getting into, obviously, day 3. The board's a little bit more picked over. It's not as robust as it was, to start the day. And so, now we're looking for, very, I'd say a little bit more of the diamond in the rough element, right? Or a little bit more of maybe taking some guys that have more upside and some potential. Maybe it wasn't, manifested itself in a perfect way on tape consistently. But those are some of the types of guys that are, still available in the draft. And so, we're excited about the value that we're able to get. And we'll see, we'll have to put in some good work here tomorrow too.
Hey, within those types of guys that, come on the last day, you're obviously gonna be looking at best players available where it fits, but is there anywhere specific that you're hoping to fill needs early on and with the first few picks? Are there still positions that you want to answer some questions?
Yeah, there's definitely some areas that we still want to address. I mean, I don't want to get into the specifics of it because then other teams that maybe have those ideas and all of a sudden they're trading in front of us and from a strategic standpoint. But yeah, there's still a few key areas on the team that we want to try to continue to address as we head into the last day.
Let's do 3 more. We'll go Vinny, Vic, and then Paul.
You look at the game logs of the players that you guys have drafted, there's a ton of games.
Yeah.
On that docket. Is that important to you? And especially from just the physicality of football, being able to be available and be out there and playing.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the process when we go through evaluating each individual player. Now, some players you're gonna take maybe a greater risk on based on the talent and things like that. Maybe a guy that's had an injury or two of something of that nature. But yeah, availability. Is very valuable, and durability is very valuable. And so that's another piece of the puzzle that we look at when we're evaluating each individual player. And then again, like I mentioned, you have to kind of look at the risk reward of, what the talent is of that player, what the injuries have been. And that all goes into the equation when you're looking at, each individual player.
The Senior Bowl is obviously a resource. You got Patrick Graham there.
Yeah.
You got 2 guys, and Young and Tucker. What were Patrick's thoughts on these guys? I'm sure he was high on them. And what was he saying to you guys about that?
Yeah, that was a big part of the process for us, and it was really valuable. Pat was able to, and Matt Edwards, one of our defensive line coaches, was also there helping out on staff, and so we were able to get a lot of intel from them, a lot of the character, the background, the classroom stuff, and I think one thing that stood out on both of those guys was just their professional demeanor, their passion for football, their ability to learn. So not a lot, I would say, a lot of maintenance, that comes into some of the extra stuff that's beyond the field stuff with those guys, because you can't learn that unless you're there coaching, like how they prepared, how they handled themselves, how they interacted with their coaches, how they took instruction. And both of those guys really excelled in those 2 areas at the Senior Bowl. And then again, we were able to watch a lot of the Senior Bowl practices and tape, and so we were able to kind of collab on what that looked like. And we felt both of those guys had good performances down there, but the most valuable stuff was the stuff that we couldn't see at practice, which was behind the scenes, and both of those guys excelled in those 2 areas.
Dave, when it comes to Trey, how unique is it for a receiver to utilize what he learned in wrestling on the football field?
It's unique, and I think what he's learned in that regard. And again, I think there's just wrestling. There's a level of toughness that you have to be a wrestler. And I think that's one thing that Trey has, to, as I mentioned, to his kind of, he's a smaller guy, but he plays bigger and he plays with an edge. And I think a lot of that toughness comes from wrestling. He also has very good balance and agility when you watch him. And if you've watched any good wrestlers, that's one thing that they're able to do is play with leverage, have agility, have balance. And I think so it's a unique thing for a receiver. You don't often see those 2 things attached. But wrestling in Akron, Ohio, and Talmadge, Ohio, where I'm from, that's a big sport back there. And so, unique for him, and you see it in his in a lot of the areas where he plays, especially in the kicking game.
All right, thank you, Dave. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you.